Welcome back to Old Paper Trails. Tonight, the air is thick with the scent of dried sage, peppermint, and old mahogany. We travel to the year 1901, stepping into the quiet, dimly lit shop of a village apothecary to join him in the delicate art of healing. October 14th, 1901. The bell above the door chimed for the last time at 6 p.m. I turned the sign to closed and drew the velvet blinds against the darkening street. The shop is mine again. I enjoy this time the most, when the customers are gone and the only company is the rows of amber glass bottles lining the shelves. The air smells faintly of camphor and beeswax polish. I spent the first hour of the evening restocking the tinctures. I moved slowly, taking care not to clink the bottles too loudly. Each bottle has its place: valerian root, chamomile, willow bark. I wiped the dust from the shoulders of the bottles with a clean linen cloth. Order is the first medicine. October 15th, 1901. A delivery of raw herbs arrived this morning from the supplier in London. The wooden crate was heavy. I spent the morning unpacking it in the back room. There were bundles of dried lavender tied with rough twine, and bags of star anise that smelled sharp and sweet like licorice. I untied the lavender bundles and placed them into the large ceramic jars. The rustling of the dry flowers sounded like whispers. I weighed the anise seeds on the brass balance scale. I added the small brass weights to one side, click, click, until the scales tipped perfectly level. Precision is everything in this trade. A grain too much or too little changes everything. October 16th, 1901. Rain has been falling steadily since noon. It taps against the shop window, blurring the view of the cobblestones outside. It is a good day for grinding. I needed to prepare a fresh batch of digestive powder. I placed the peppermint leaves and ginger root into the heavy stone mortar. The pestle is made of marble, cool and smooth in my hand. I worked in a rhythmic circle: grind, crush, turn, grind, crush, turn. The sound is low and gritty. As I worked, the oils were released, filling the room with a sharp, clean fragrance that clears the head. I continued this for an hour until the mixture was a fine, uniform dust. October 17th, 1901. Thursday. The shop was quiet. I spent the afternoon writing labels. My handwriting must be clear. Mistakes are dangerous. I dipped my pen into the black ink and wrote on the gummed paper rectangles: cough syrup, take 1 spoon daily. I pasted them onto the new bottles of syrup I brewed yesterday. The glue smells of fish bones, a stark contrast to the sweet syrup. I lined the finished bottles up on the counter. 12 bottles standing like soldiers in a row. The amber glass catches the light from the gas lamp, glowing with a deep, honey-colored warmth. It is a simple satisfaction, seeing a job completed. October 18th, 1901. A local farmer brought in a basket of beeswax today as payment for his wife's tonic. It is high-quality wax, yellow and fragrant. I decided to make a batch of healing salve for cracked skin. I melted the wax slowly over a small flame in the back room, adding olive oil and drop of rose water. I stirred the mixture with a wooden spoon. The liquid swirled, golden and smooth. I poured it carefully into small tin pots. Drip, drip, drip. I had to be steady so as not to spill a drop. I watched as the liquid cooled and turned opaque. It is like capturing sunlight in a tin. October 19th, 1901. Saturday. The week ends quietly. I spent the evening organizing the poison cabinet. It is a locked cupboard behind the main counter, kept separate for safety. Here live the blue-ribbed bottles, arsenic, belladonna, hemlock. The ribbed glass is a warning to the touch, even in the dark. I checked the levels of each. I recorded the inventory in the red ledger book. Belladonna, 2 ounces remaining. I locked the cabinet and put the key in my waistcoat pocket. The metal feels cold against my chest. It is a heavy responsibility, holding the power to heal and the power to harm on the same shelf. October 20th, 1901. Sunday. The shop is closed. I came down only to check the temperature of the storeroom. Many syrups will spoil if it gets too warm. It was cool and dry, exactly 55 degrees. I sat in the armchair behind the counter for a while, simply listening to the silence. The shop has a presence. The wood, the glass, the herbs, they all seem to breathe quietly. I polished my brass reading glasses with a handkerchief. Tomorrow the bell will ring again. People will come with their ailments, and the dance will resume. But for tonight, the apothecary sleeps. October 21st, 1901. Monday morning. The week begins with the filtration of the distilled water. I set up the large glass funnel over a clean demijohn. I folded the thick white filter paper into a cone. Folding it requires a crisp crease to ensure it sits perfectly in the glass neck. I poured the water slowly. It drips through the paper with a hypnotic rhythm. Drop, drop, drop. It will take hours to filter the entire batch. While it worked, I cleaned my spatula collection. The steel blades had grown dull. I polished them with a leather strop until they reflected the morning light like mirrors. The shop is quiet, save for the steady dripping of the water. October 22nd, 1901. I spent the afternoon making pills for Mrs. Higgins. It is a craft that requires patience. I mixed the medicinal powder with a little syrup of glucose on the white ceramic tile. Using the flat of my knife, I worked it into a stiff, dough-like mass. It must be firm but pliable. Then I rolled it out into a long, thin pipe like a snake. I placed it on the brass pill cutter. With one swift movement of the cutter, clack! The pipe was divided into 24 equal spheres. I dusted them with licorice powder so they would not stick together. Rolling them in the box makes a soft, dry shuffling sound. October 23rd, 1901. A shipment of new corks arrived today, sacks of them smelling of dry bark in Portugal. I sat on the stool behind the counter and sorted them by size. Number 4s for the small phials, number 6s for the standard mixture bottles. The cork is rough and warm to the touch. I checked each one for imperfections. A bad cork means spoiled medicine. I discarded 3 that were too porous. I pressed the good ones into the drawers. The friction of cork against wood is a sound unique to this trade. It felt satisfying to see the drawers filled to the brim, ready for the winter rush. October 25th, 1901. I devoted the day to the brass weights. My balance scale is the heart of the apothecary, and the weights must be true. I took the small brass grains and scruples out of their velvet-lined box. Over time they tarnish, which can affect their weight by a fraction of a grain. I used a soft cloth and a paste of vinegar and chalk. I rubbed each tiny weight in circular motions. The tarnish lifted, revealing the bright pale gold color underneath. I handled them with tweezers to avoid leaving oil from my fingers. Placing them back into their slots, clink, 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 is a ritual of order. October 26th, 1901. Saturday. A quiet evening. I had to seal a package of dried herbs to be sent by post to the next village. I wrapped the box in thick brown paper. The paper is stiff and crinkles loudly as I fold the corners. I tied it with hemp string, pulling the knots tight. To secure it, I lit a stick of red sealing wax. The flame melted the wax, and a hot red droplet fell onto the knot.
I pressed my seal into the soft wax. Squish. It hardened in seconds. The smell of burnt shellac lingered in the air for a long time. It smells like official business. October 27th, 1901. Sunday. The shop is closed. I spent the afternoon in the study upstairs, reading a new edition of the Pharmacopoeia. It describes new methods for extracting alkaloids. The book is heavy, bound in dark green cloth. The pages are thin and crisp. Turning them creates a sharp rustle in the silent room. I made notes in the margins with a pencil. Outside, the church bells rang for the evening service, but here, surrounded by books and the faint scent of dried herbs rising from the shop below, I am in my own cathedral.
October 28th, 1901. Monday. The morning sun was bright and low, striking the large show globes in the window. These great glass vessels, filled with colored water, red, blue, and green, are the beacon of my trade. Today I climbed the stepladder to clean them. I used a soft chamois leather to polish the glass. As I rubbed, the sunlight filtered through the colored liquid, casting stained glass patterns onto the floorboards. Crimson and emerald light danced on the wood. It was quiet work. I checked the stoppers to ensure no evaporation had occurred. The liquid is still, clear, and vibrant, a silent signal to the street that help is at hand. October 29th, 1901. I attended to the leeches today. It is a task many find unpleasant but necessary. They are kept in a large white ceramic jar with a perforated lid. The water must be changed every 2 days to keep them healthy. I carefully poured out the old water, splash, into the bucket. Then I refilled the jar with fresh rainwater. The leeches swam vigorously in the clean current, black ribbons moving in the clear water. I added a smooth stone for them to rest on. It is a strange livestock to keep, silent and hungry, but the doctors still call for them regularly. I wiped the rim of the jar and replaced the lid. October 30th, 1901. Winter is approaching, and with it the season of coughs. I spent the day preparing a large batch of horehound lozenges. I boiled the sugar and herbal extract in a copper pan over the stove. The copper conducts heat evenly. The mixture bubbled thickly, bloop, bloop, releasing a steam that smelled of earth and bitterness. When it reached the hard crack stage, I poured the molten amber liquid onto a greased marble slab. It spread out like a golden pool. I scored it into squares with a knife before it hardened completely. The sound of the knife against the cooling sugar was sharp and crisp. October 31st, 1901. All Hallows Eve. The village is superstitious. A few older women came in today, asking for bags of dried rosemary and rowan berries to hang above their doors for protection. I weighed the herbs solemnly, tying the small muslin bags with red thread. The wind has picked up outside, rattling the loose frame of the door. I spent the evening organizing the dried roots in the bottom drawers: mandrake, dandelion, burdock. They are gnarled and twisted, looking like little wooden men. I feel safe here, surrounded by these earthy remedies. The shop smells of drying leaves and old magic. November 1st, 1901. November begins with a gray, leaden sky. I opened a fresh page in the Dangerous Drugs Register. It is a legal requirement. I recorded the morning's dispensing. Laudanum, 2 drams, for Mr. Miller's toothache. The pen scratched loudly on the high-quality paper. I enjoy the bureaucracy of the shop. The columns, the dates, the signatures. It imposes order on the chaos of illness. Later, I dusted the shelves of patent medicines, Beecham's pills, Elliman's embrocation. The paper wrappers are colorful, promising miracles. I aligned them perfectly, face forward, a wall of promises. November 2nd, 1901. Saturday. I decided to wax the mahogany counter. It is the centerpiece of the shop.
worn smooth by the elbows of 1,000 customers. I applied a paste of beeswax and turpentine with a heavy cloth. It requires elbow grease. I rubbed in circular motions, working the wax into the grain. The wood drank it in, darkening to a deep, rich brown. The smell of turpentine is sharp and clean. After an hour of polishing, the counter shone like a dark mirror. I could see the reflection of the gas lamps in the wood. I ran my hand along the surface. It was cool and frictionless. November 3rd, Sunday, a day of rest. I walked through the woods to collect fresh moss for the window display. The air was cold and damp, smelling of decay and wet earth. I found a patch of vibrant green sphagnum moss growing on an old oak stump. I peeled it away carefully in sheets. It was soft and damp in my hands, like a living sponge. Back at the shop, I arranged the moss around the base of the show globes. It brings a touch of the forest inside. The contrast of the bright green moss against the polished wood and glass is pleasing to the eye. I sat and admired it until the light failed. November 4th, 1901, Monday. I began the week by distilling peppermint water. I set up the glass retort over the spirit lamp. The flame is small and blue, burning steadily. As the liquid heats, it travels down the long glass neck of the condenser. Drip, drip, drip. The receiving flask slowly fills with clear, potent liquid. The smell of peppermint is overpowering, sharp and cool in the nostrils. It clears the mind. I watched the process for hours, adjusting the flame occasionally to keep the boil gentle. It is a slow science. Patience is the only catalyst that matters here. November 5th, 1901, Guy Fawkes Night. The village is alive with noise outside, shouts, crackers, and the distant roar of a bonfire. Inside, the shop is a sanctuary of quiet. I drew the blinds tight to block out the flashing lights. I busied myself by grinding dried bark for a tonic. The mortar and pestle provide a steady, rhythmic counterpoint to the chaos outside. Crush, grind, turn. I focused entirely on the texture of the bark, watching it transform from rough chips into a fine brown powder. The world outside can burn and shout. In here, there is only the work. November 6th, 1901. The morning brought a heavy frost. The windows were patterned with ice ferns. I spent the first hour polishing the brass pill roller. It is a heavy machine, with grooved rollers used to cut pill masses. I disassembled it carefully, wiping each brass groove with an oily rag. The metal is cold and heavy. Reassembling it requires precision. The screws must be tight or the pills will be uneven. Click, click, squeak. I oiled the gears until the handle turned silently. A well-maintained machine is a joy to use. November 7th, 1901, Thursday. A customer complained of a chest cold. I prepared a mustard poultice. I mixed the mustard flour with warm water in a ceramic bowl. It formed a thick yellow paste that smelled pungent and hot. I spread it onto a square of white muslin cloth. The paste makes a wet slapping sound as I smooth it out with the spatula. I folded the cloth over to seal it. It felt warm and heavy in my hands. I wrapped it in brown paper and handed it over. Healing is often just a matter of applying heat to the right place. November 8th, 1901. I spent the afternoon organizing the drawer of roots, valerian, gentian, licorice. They are gnarled and dried, looking like skeletal fingers. They rattle dryly against each other as I sort them. The smell is earthy and deep, like damp soil. I checked for any signs of mold or damp. All is dry. I weighed out a pound of licorice root for the stock jar. The roots make a hollow wooden sound as they fall into the glass jar. I corked it tightly. These roots have absorbed the earth's energy, waiting to release it. November 9th, 1901. Saturday, the busiest day of the week. By evening, the till was full of heavy copper pennies and silver sixpences. After locking the door, I sat at the counter to count the takings. I stacked the coins into neat piles. Clink, clink, clink. The sound of metal on wood is the sound of survival. I recorded the total in the ledger. £3, 4 shillings, and 6 pence. A good week. I put the coins into a canvas bag and locked it in the safe. The heavy thud of the safe door closing signals the end of the working week. November 10th, 1901. Sunday. A day of absolute rest. I did not enter the shop floor today. Instead, I sat by the fire in my living quarters upstairs, reading a botanical journal. The rain lashed against the roof, but the fire popped and crackled warmly. I drank a cup of tea, listening to the wind howling down the chimney. I thought about the rows of bottles downstairs, standing in the dark, silent and ready. They do not need me today. We both rest.
November 11th, 1901. Monday. A thick fog has descended upon the village. It presses against the window panes, turning the world outside into a milky white void. I spent the morning preparing a rose-water lotion for cracked hands. The process is gentle. I poured the distilled rosewater into the mixing bowl. The scent is like a summer garden, shocking and sweet in the middle of November. I whisked in the glycerin slowly. Swish, swish, swish. The liquid thickened into a silky, translucent emulsion. I poured it into small blue glass jars. The contrast of the pink lotion against the blue glass is beautiful. November 12th, 1901. The cold is seeping into the shop. I kept the stove burning high all day. I spent the afternoon organizing the prescription file. These are the slips of paper brought in by patients, written in the doctor's scrawling hand. I threaded them onto a long metal spike. Skewer. Each piece of paper represents a pain, a worry, a hope. Now they are just paper. I filed them away in the archive box on the top shelf. The shop is a library of ailments, and I am its librarian. November 13th, 1901. Wednesday. A quiet day. I took the time to clean my mortar and pestle collection. I have them in marble, ceramic, and iron. I washed them in warm, soapy water, scrubbing away the residue of 100 different powders. Drying the heavy iron mortar requires care to prevent rust. I placed it near the stove to warm. The heat radiating from the metal feels solid and grounding. These tools will outlast me. They will be grinding herbs long after I am gone. November 14th, 1901. Twilight falls early now at 4 p.m. I lit the gas lamps one by one. The hiss of the gas is a comfort. The light reflects off the hundreds of glass bottles lining the walls. Amber, blue, clear, and green. It looks like a jewelry box. I stood in the center of the shop and just breathed. The air is a complex perfume. Dried sage, sharp peppermint, sweet beeswax, and the metallic tang of the brass scales. It is the smell of safety. It is the smell of home. November 15th, 1901. The week draws to a close. I have finished the final mixture of the day, a sleeping draught for an elderly neighbor, valerian and hops. I corked the bottle firmly. Squeak! I placed it on the counter for collection. The shop is tidy, the scales are balanced, the ledger is closed. I turn the key in the front door, locking out the cold night. The bell is silent, the work is done. The apothecary rests. Outro. The apothecary turns down the gas lamps.
The amber bottles fade into the shadows. The scent of lavender and old wood lingers in the air. Thank you for stepping into this quiet shop with us. The remedies are prepared. The door is locked. You are safe here. Sleep well.